how to warm up for your run. Hello there, my friends, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Dr. Alyssa Olenick, and I have a PhD in exercise physiology, and I'm a lifting, running, and hybrid coach. And today I want to walk you through how I personally like to warm up in my run and or program warm-ups for my clients. When it comes to running, a lot of people like to just walk out the door and hit the road, and they classify their first mile as an easy warm-up for their run. And often they find that they're getting nags and niggles, little injuries or things popping up in their running, and they're thinking, well, what the heck am I doing wrong? Well, there's a lot of variables that can go into that. One of the things I see a lot of people neglect the most is warming up for their run. Now, you don't have to have a fancy 17-step, 25-minute long running warm-up. Our running is already so time demanding as is. So I want to show you some of the components that I like to include in my personal warm-ups and or for clients, but also give you practical application and tips on how to make this short and concise if you're short on time and or trying to get out the door and get on your run. You can warm up your run in just a few minutes. It doesn't need to take a ton of extra time, but it can add a lot of value. So you're actually warm going into your run and not just hitting the ground, running, and getting out the door. So first, let's start with some body weight resistance exercises that I like to do. Personally, I'm someone who's struggled with a long history of running injuries. I have hypermobility, and it leads to tons of little flare-up things over time. And something that I have found tremendously helpful is including a little bit of lighter resistance training or moving my body through different planes of motion or getting the muscles that I'm going to use during my runs warmed up or simply warming them up by exercising them a little bit before I get out the door. So I like to think about things that are going to be targeting my glutes, my hamstrings, my quads, and my calves and or my feet. These are the main muscles that are propelling you forward during running training and or would be just starting cold if you're just walking out the door and hitting the road. The next thing I like to move into is going to be things like low grade plyometrics, hops, or skips. And if you're short on time, this is the point that I would maybe fast forward to and get in as at least a minimum before running out the door. A lot of people don't think about the fact that running itself is almost a series of low grade tiny hops or plyometrics. And so they think of running as just endurance training and don't realize that it requires elasticity and response and rebounding of our muscles. And a lot of that is also coming from our tendons and ligaments that are helping propel or stretch our muscles so we can keep moving forward. A good warm-up allows us to not only get those muscles prepared, but also get all those tissues ready for the stimulus we're about to put on our body. So let me walk you through some of my favorite moves to include in my running warm-up and how to program this for yourself. One of the first exercises that I include before any run that I do is going to target one of the most important muscle groups for runners that we tend to forget or neglect until it's too late, and that is the calves. So even I, who have been blessed with the calf genetic lottery thanks to my father, was not saved from a calf-related injury or neglecting my calf strength or using or warming up my calves in my running, and then that turning into something that negatively impacted my training moving forward. So something that I'm personally always including in my running warm-ups, no matter the day, no matter where I'm at, is at least some quick calf warm-ups. So whether I'm doing it in my gym or on the side of the street or the road or off the edge of the parking lot, wherever I'm training at, I'm always putting my calves through some sort of range of motion or warm-up sets before I start my running. So you don't have to do all three of these different calf raise variations before every single run, but these are three that I like to include. The 2-leg calf raise, I always like to do it on an elevation so you're kind of getting through the full range of motion. I will sometimes balance if I'm not using weight and specifically training my calves with weight like I do in my strength training sessions, and or single leg ones, and sometimes I'll even do isometric holds at the top or do a slow tempo through it, simply warming up my calves for the day. However, the calf is made up of two different muscle groups, and those target one of the main muscles of the calf, but there's another tiny muscle within the belly of the calf that you can also target as well that a lot of people tend to neglect that I like to target with a bent over or knee raised calf raise like I'm going to show you here. So what I do for this is I simply get on a box or a bench and I put both of my hands onto this, and then I kind of get in this almost angled position, and then I bend my knees forward and get on the toes of my feet, and then I raise up my calves to go on my toes. So it's almost supported while I'm doing that, but I'm raising up onto my calves into my toes at that knee bent angle. This allows you to target both of those muscles within your calf belly and allow you to warm up both of those in preparation for the day. So I do love including within a strength training program or a running warm up, both versions or different versions or multiple versions of calf raises across periods of time. So we're always trying to divvy up the way that we're training, stressing, or stimulating the calves. But you don't need to think about your pre-run warm up as a calf strengthening workout. I just like getting some reps in and going through the motion to get my calves ready and warmed up for that day. The next thing I like to do is pick 2 to 3 exercises that warm up and or target my glutes, hamstrings, or quads, the main muscle groups that we're using in this. And I don't think about loading them or going super heavy. Again, going through the motion of that movement. So for me personally, 3 of my favorites are a side step, step up, a single leg glute bridge, and a single leg RDL. On busy days, I do 1 set of each of these and just move through the motions to help get ready for the day. If I have a little bit more time, I might go through 2, depending on how stiff I am and or how much warm up I feel like I need, but it doesn't need to be a full strength session. Again, I'm just trying to move my muscles through the motion of what I'm doing that day. And you could simply pick one of these to add to your routine, a calf move, a strength move, and then one of the more hoppy or plyometric moves I'll go over in a second here with you. So one of my favorite warm-up step-up variations is simply the side step up, step down. I like this because it targets both your quads and your glutes. Historically, I'm a runner who struggles with a lot of my glute med or glute weakness and pain, and allows me to keep that strength, but also warm up that little bit of a more troubled tissue area for me. You might swap this for something else that feels good for you and or feels good for you to warm up, and that still works those similar muscle groups. So feel free to get creative and moving in different step-up variations or quad-specific squatting, lunging, split squat variations that might feel good for you to move through or are accessible for you to do wherever you're training. So this one is one of my favorites. I like to step up and then do the slow step down tap. This is really, really working that glute med on the outside, and this is a strength move that I love to do also in my strength training programs. So I simply like doing this for maybe a set or 2 of 8 to 10 reps. I honestly just do them body weight. I add weight to them when I'm doing them for my strength training sessions in the gym. And have no fear, if you can't do such a high box for a step down or step up, you can do a lower box or a different alternation or variation. A lunge can work just fine. The next thing I like to do is a glute bridge, either with double or single legs. This is something that's super easy to do in your house before you leave the gym. You can either do it with your back elevated here on the bench to do both hips, moving through that full range of motion, warming up those glutes, or you can opt for a single leg variation. Same thing, moving through that full range of motion, targeting those glutes, or simply if you don't have a box or a bench, you can lay on the and do the same exact thing. Again, we're looking at something of 1 to 2 sets, maybe 8 to 10 reps per leg. Body weight is likely fine. Just moving those muscles through the motion to get them warmed up, blood flowing, and ready for the day of what you're doing. It doesn't need to be a full strength training workout. And last, I love an RDL variation for warming up my hamstrings and my glutes as well. So this can be a double leg RDL, a single leg RDL, a B stance RDL, a cross rotation RDL. I simply love this because it kind of captures the rest of the muscle groups that I didn't fully target in a step up or a glute bridge to holistically target all the muscles that I'm gonna be using during my run. So I've got my handy dandy B stance here. We've got a single leg RDL. A nice rotational RDL. Or just your regular one. When I'm thinking about doing these before my run, I'm thinking about moving through them quickly, but with quality. I'm simply trying to get the muscles that I'm using that day moving. Again, it doesn't need to be its entire strength session on its own. You can think about moving through these quickly and maybe a minute or 2 before moving on to your more formal run up for your run, especially if you are someone like me who does have some underlying injuries and or nags or niggles. You can replace what I just showed you there specifically with potentially rehab or rehab work you have from a physical therapist. I will also sometimes sub out those movements or variations for things that I have for my PT that I always need to be doing, and it's really helpful to just have it stacked it on to the front of my running warm-up. Let's hit the street. One of the things I love to include in warm-ups are going to be low-grade plyometrics. The reason I love doing a semi-more formal warm-up before doing this is that you're not just jumping into jumping, but I'll walk you through also my favorite way to do this if you're short on time and just trying to get out the door. When I'm thinking about low grade plyometrics, I'm thinking about small hopping, skipping, or tiny jump movements that are simply repeated bouncy like efforts, not your big plyos like big box jumps or super intense specific higher level plyometrics that you might do for athletic training in the gym. Just kind of getting some rebound and bounce on your lower body before you simply go into an activity that is small rebound and bounce over and over of your body weight. So the first one that I love is going to be your classic skip. Skipping is so easy to do anywhere. It is an easy, friendly one to just simply jump into if you're short on time or trying to get out the door. And usually I recommend to clients or anyone who's short on time with running warm up is to simply get in a few intervals of 30 seconds of skipping with a 30-second break before you get out the door. Maybe 3 to 5 rounds of 20 to 30 seconds of skip with a little bit of rest between, and then get on with your run. So the first one is going to be simply the skip. The next thing I like are pogo hops. I love me a good pogo hop as either a warm up in our lifting programs before a specific plyometric or before a run. We have 2 variations of pogo hops that I love, and that is going to be the double leg pogo hop or the single leg pogo hop. If you're new to these, start with double leg. Single leg is a little bit more advanced of a move, and don't think about jumping as high as you can, but short, little, quick bounces. The next one that I really like is going to be the lateral or side to side hop or jump, simply moving from leg to leg, doing a little bit of lateral hopping or a zigzag hop to get some lateral hopping in before your runs. Now, if you've never done any sort of jumping before, it might be a little too advanced for you and you might want to ease into things. Starting with something like a skip is great, or something else that you can do in place of this if you're on the road or on the sidewalk or near your house after you've done some calf raises, maybe some skipping, is doing some things like knee hugs and or walking hamstring hugs or hamstring sweeps, things like that. And if you want to get more advanced with your plyometrics over time, you can start doing things like A skips and B skips, which are a little bit more advanced running drills that people kind of take from sprinter type training. And we won't cover those here today, but it is a way to get more advanced in your running warm up and preparation, especially if you're going into something like speed workouts. Now, I know I walked you guys through a lot of options and possibilities for your running warm ups, and I don't want you to be overwhelmed and think you have to do all of these things to have a successful or safe run. My best guidance for you is to pick 3 or 4 of those movements or types of movements that I showed you here today and do 1 to 3 rounds of going through those for about 20 to 30 seconds or 6 to 10 reps each with a little bit of rest in between, but it can kind of go back to back to back and be pretty quick. So you simply are warmed up and ready for your run. It doesn't need to be super long and exhaustive, but you just simply want to get your body moving. With all things with warm-ups, you want to get warm first, and that is one of the most important things, simply getting your blood flowing, and that's what going through these movements are doing. But then also when it comes to preparing for your run, simply getting your tissues and or muscles ready for the activity that they're about to endure. If you found this video helpful, give me 1 exercise below that you're going to add to your running warm-up, or if you're going to commit to doing an actual running warm-up. I know who you are if you've been skipping out on this. And if you found this video helpful, go ahead and like it and subscribe, and I will catch you guys on the next one.